My son spilled a plate of boiling hot chicken and vegetable soup right over my head during our family dinner. I felt the liquid sear my scalp, run down my forehead, and soak my gray hair, which I had styled so carefully that afternoon. Chunks of carrot and celery rained down on my shoulders. The scent of chicken broth mingled with my expensive perfume. But the worst part wasn't the physical pain. The worst part was the silence. 20 pairs of eyes watched me. No one moved. No one said a word. My son, Marcus, stood up slowly, wearing that twisted smirk he'd perfected over 45 years of getting everything without effort. He pointed at the door with an accusing finger. "You have 10 minutes to get out of my house," he said. His voice sounded theatrical, rehearsed. 10 minutes to get out of my family." Chloe, my daughter-in-law, that woman of fake smiles and empty hugs, remained seated, motionless. Then she started to clap. Slowly at first, then louder. Other guests joined in. The applause rang in my ears like funeral bells. I wiped my face with the napkin and took a deep breath. 67 years of humiliations condensed into a single moment. But something inside me didn't break. It hardened. I reached into my purse and pulled out a manila envelope. I tossed it onto the table. The documents scattered among the dirty plates and lit candles. "Correct," I said, my voice ice cold. 10 minutes, and everything that is yours will have disappeared. But to understand how I arrived at this moment, with soup dripping from my hair and vengeance in my hands, I need to take you back, way back. Back to when I was just an invisible girl in a house full of voices that never spoke my name with love. I grew up knowing I wasn't enough, that I never would be. My brother, Marcus, was the sun around which our family revolved. I was barely a shadow in the corner. Every one of his achievements was celebrated as if he'd discovered the cure for cancer. He got a C in math, and my mother, Denise, organized special dinners. He won a high school football game, and my father, Elijah, invited the neighbors over to celebrate. I brought home perfect grades and got a distracted nod. I won science contests and received a half-hearted, "Very good, Naomi," without them lifting their eyes from the newspaper. I remember one Christmas. I was 11 years old. Marcus received a brand new bicycle, bright red with gear shifts. He had begged for it for months. He screamed with excitement and hugged Mom. The photographs of that moment still exist in some album I never opened again. I received a knitted sweater, 2 sizes too big, mustard yellow, and clearly used. It smelled of mothballs and had a stain on the sleeve. I smiled and said, "Thank you," because that was what was expected of me. Always grateful, always invisible. Marcus wrecked that bicycle in 3 months, left it out in the rain, and abandoned it in the garage until it rusted. But he always had something new. There was always something new for Marcus. The only person who truly saw me was my Grandpa Reginald. When I walked into a room, his eyes lit up. When I spoke, he listened to every word as if it were sacred poetry. "Naomi," he would tell me while we walked through his garden of roses and jasmine, "you have fire in your eyes. Don't let anyone put it out." I was 13 the first time he told me that. I didn't fully understand it then, but I kept those words like a secret treasure. Grandpa Reginald had been a surgeon, one of the best of his generation. Retired before I was born, he kept his medical books on oak shelves in his study. He let me browse them, sit in his worn leather armchair, and dream of impossible futures for an invisible girl. "Do you want to be a doctor, Naomi?" he asked one day. "Yes," I replied without hesitation. "I want to be remembered for something important." He smiled, that smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Then you will be. And when you succeed, they will finally understand what they let slip away." But my family never understood. At 18, I was accepted into the university to study medicine, a full scholarship thanks to my exceptional grades. My mother barely looked up from her magazine. "That's nice," she said with that flat tone she used for everything of mine. "You'll be very busy then." My father grumbled something about how difficult it would be. Marcus laughed. He said I'd probably drop out in the first semester because women weren't cut out for that kind of thing. Grandpa Reginald took me out to an elegant restaurant, just the two of us. We toasted with orange juice because I wasn't old enough for wine. "To Dr. Naomi," he said, raising his glass. "The woman who will show the world what she's made of." I cried that night in my room, not from sadness, but from a strange mixture of gratitude and pain. Gratitude for having at least one person who believed in me. Pain, because that person shouldn't have been the exception. The university years were brutal. I studied until my eyes burned. I worked night shifts at coffee shops. I slept 4 hours a night. Whenever I felt I couldn't go on, I remembered Grandpa's words, the fire in my eyes. I couldn't let it go out. Marcus went to college to study business administration. My parents paid every cent, bought him a new car, rented apartments for him near campus. He failed the first year 3 times. Parties, alcohol, girlfriends who changed monthly. My parents justified every failure. "He's finding his way," Mom would say. "Boys need time," Dad would add. I graduated with honors in 6 years. Marcus took 9 years to finish a degree that should have taken 5, but when he finally did, the party was the event of the year. Over 100 guests, a rented ballroom, live music, a 3-tiered cake. When I graduated from medical school, Grandpa Reginald took me out to dinner. Just the two of us. My parents were busy with something I can't remember. Marcus didn't answer my call. "Naomi," Grandpa told me that night, his eyes shining with pride. "Always remember this. True family isn't the one that shares your blood. It's the one that recognizes your light when everyone else is blind." I didn't know then that those words would be prophetic, that decades later, on a night of hot soup and public humiliation, those words would ring out like bells of justice. My medical residency was my personal hell. 36-hour shifts in the hospital, hands trembling with exhaustion while suturing wounds, life-or-death decisions with cold coffee as my only fuel. There were moments when my body just begged to give up, but I didn't. Every patient saved was a victory against all those who said I couldn't do it. Every time a patient took my hand and thanked me with tears, I felt my existence had purpose beyond being the forgotten daughter. Grandpa Reginald visited whenever he could. He brought homemade food in plastic containers that I devoured between shifts. He sat in the hospital cafeteria for hours, just waiting for me to have 10 minutes free. "I am proud of you," he always told me, more than words can express. I needed to hear that. I needed it like air, because at home, when I visited on my rare days off, the conversation always revolved around Marcus and his business ventures. He had decided to be an entrepreneur. He didn't want to work for anyone. He was destined to be a boss, not an employee. My parents looked on admiringly and gave him $50,000 as seed money for a sports clothing store that went bankrupt in 8 months. He lost everything in inventory he never sold, and an overly expensive storefront. But my parents simply said it was part of the learning process. They gave him another $30,000 for his next idea, a mobile app for food delivery, before those apps were popular. He could have been a visionary if Marcus had the slightest idea about technology. He hired cheap programmers. The product was full of glitches, and the advertising ran before the service was even functional. 6 months, and everything collapsed. I finished my residency and started a specialization in cardiovascular surgery, one of the most difficult, most demanding, and most competitive fields. I chose it precisely for that reason. I wanted to be where the mediocre couldn't reach. I spent 4 more years perfecting my technique. I studied with the best. I attended international conferences, paying for my own tickets. I read every new paper published. I became a sponge, absorbing knowledge as if my life depended on it. It worked. At 38 years old, I was offered a position at one of the most prestigious hospitals in the country, not just as a surgeon, but as chief of cardiovascular surgery at Metropolitan General Hospital. It was recognition that doctors with 20 more years of experience only dreamed of receiving. I called my family, my hands shaking. For once, I thought maybe they would say something meaningful, that they would recognize that their invisible daughter had achieved something extraordinary. My mother answered, "Naomi? What a surprise. Is something wrong?" "No, Mom. Quite the opposite. I was named Chief of Cardiovascular Surgery at Metropolitan General. It's one of the most important positions in the country. Silence. So long that I thought the call had dropped. Mom, are you there? Yes, that's good, honey. Congratulations. Listen, can I call you back later? We're organizing a dinner for Marcus. He got investors for his new company. We want to celebrate big. I hung up without saying goodbye. I sat on the floor of my empty apartment. I cried until I was dry. 38 years old, and I was still hoping for something different, still hoping they would see me. Grandpa Reginald called that same night. He always had a sixth sense for knowing when I needed him. Naomi, my brilliant girl, your mother told me about your appointment. She should be kissing the ground you walk on. What you have achieved is extraordinary. They don't care, Grandpa, I said, my voice broken. They never have. I know, my love, but there is something you need to understand. Their indifference does not define your worth. You are valuable because of what you built with your own hands, with your own brain, with your own heart. And when the right time comes, they will understand what they lost. I promise you. I didn't understand what the right time meant then, but Grandpa Reginald always spoke in riddles about the future. Marcus lost all that investor money in less than a year. His consulting firm was a barely disguised fraud. It promised results it never delivered, charging absurd fees for generic advice copied from the internet. The investors sued him. My parents paid the out-of-court settlement with another $40,000. Marcus never faced real consequences. He never did. He met Chloe around that time. She worked in public relations. She was beautiful. Her brown hair always perfect, her smile practiced, her manners impeccable, the type of woman who knows how to behave in every situation. From the first moment, I knew she was fake, but Marcus was delighted. He had finally found someone who fed his ego as much as our parents did. They got married in an extravagant ceremony, over $100,000, all paid for by Denise and Elijah. I was invited out of obligation. I was seated at a back table, far from the main family, next to distant cousins I hadn't seen in years. During the toast, my father spoke for 15 minutes about how proud he was of his son. Marcus has overcome obstacles, he said in an emotional voice. He's fallen and gotten back up. That's what a real man does. Obstacles they paid to resolve, falls they cushioned with money, but nobody mentioned those details. Grandpa Reginald was sitting beside me. He squeezed my hand under the table when he saw my eyes well up. Patience, he whispered. Everything comes at its own time. Marcus and Chloe moved into a house my parents helped them buy. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a large yard in an upper-middle-class neighborhood. More than most people could dream of having in their 30s. I, who earned 4 times more than Marcus in his best months, had bought my own condo years earlier. I paid for it alone. Every cent. My place was smaller than my brother's house, but it was mine, completely mine. The years passed and my career continued to ascend. I published papers in international medical journals. I was invited as a speaker in Boston, London, and Tokyo. I performed surgeries that other doctors considered impossible. I saved lives others had given up on. I appeared in medical documentaries. I was interviewed on news programs as an expert. My face became recognizable in professional circles. Young doctors sought my advice. Students wanted to practice under my supervision. My family barely noticed. When I appeared on a national television program talking about advances in heart transplants, my mother commented that my hairstyle didn't suit me. My father said I had talked too fast. Marcus didn't even watch the program. Grandpa Reginald recorded it on a VHS tape. He watched it 3 times. Someday, he told me during one of our private dinners, they are going to want to boast that you are their daughter. They will tell everyone that the famous Dr. Naomi is their family. And when that day comes, I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember who was here when you were invisible. Marcus continued to sink in his own failures while I harvested successes, but his ego never diminished. If anything, it grew proportionally with every financial disaster, as if reality couldn't touch him. He was always protected by the infinite cushion of our parents' money. After the consulting firm fiasco, he decided to become a real estate developer. He convinced Chloe to quit her stable job to join his adventure. "We're going to be millionaires," he promised her with that blind confidence only the incompetent possess. My parents gave him $60,000 for the first project, an old house in a declining neighborhood that Marcus claimed had incredible potential. He hired cheap workers. The work was terrible. The remodel took 3 times the planned time and cost double the budget. When he tried to sell it, the market had changed. He had to sell at a loss, but Marcus had an explanation for everything. The economy had been against him. The workers betrayed him. The agent was incompetent. It was never his fault. Never. I watched him from afar. From my world of successful surgeries and professional recognition, I felt a mix of pity and repulsion. Pity because it was pathetic to see a 40-year-old man depending on his parents like a teenager. Repulsion because he never showed humility or gratitude. There was a time when I was 43 that I tried to reach out. I thought that maybe if I offered genuine help, we could build something like a real fraternal relationship. I called him on a Tuesday afternoon. "Marcus, I heard you're looking for new opportunities. I have contacts in hospital administration. There are management positions that might interest you. Real stable work, a good salary." He laughed, a dry, cruel laugh. "Real work? You mean being someone's employee? Naomi, I'm not made to be a common worker. I'm an entrepreneur, a visionary. You can't understand it because you're just a glorified employee who cuts up bodies for money." I hung up without answering. That was the last time I tried to help him, the last time I extended an olive branch that he burned before I could even touch it. Grandpa Reginald was 87 years old. His health began to deteriorate. Heart problems. Ironically, my field of specialization. I personally reviewed all his tests. I consulted with the best cardiologists in the country. I made sure he received the best possible treatment. I spent every free moment with him. Dinners at his house where he told stories of when he was young, of his own revolutionary surgeries, of patients he remembered decades later. He spoke of my grandmother, who had passed away before I was born, with such pure love that it made me believe true love existed. "Naomi," he told me one night as we sat in his living room filled with antique books. "I need to talk to you about something important." His voice sounded different, more serious, more urgent. "What's wrong, Grandpa? Do you feel ill? Do you need me to call the cardiologist?" "No, my girl, it's not that. It's about the future. My future. Or rather, the absence of it." My blood ran cold. "Don't talk like that. You still have many years left." "Naomi, I'm a doctor. You're a doctor. We both know how to read the signs. My heart is tired, and that's okay. I've lived a long and mostly happy life, but I need to ensure that when I'm gone, things are left the way they should be." He pulled an envelope from the drawer of his nightstand. It was thick, sealed with red wax like in old movies. My name was written in his elegant calligraphy on the front. "This envelope is for you, and only for you. When I pass away, my lawyer, Mr. Sterling, will formally deliver it to you, but I want you to know now that it exists. Do not open it until that moment. Promise me, Grandpa. Please, promise me, Naomi." Tears rolled down my cheeks. "I promise." Inside are important documents, instructions, things I prepared over 3 years. Your family will be upset. Your mother, your father, especially Marcus. But everything I did was done with full awareness and for reasons that will become very clear. "What's in the envelope?" "Justice," he simply replied. "Delayed justice." I didn't understand then, but I stored that envelope in my personal safe. I tried not to think about it too much. Thinking meant accepting that Grandpa Reginald was truly preparing to leave. 6 months later, on a cold November morning, I received the call I had feared. Grandpa Reginald had passed away peacefully during the night, asleep, without pain. His heart simply stopped, tired after 88 years of beating. I cried for 3 days. I cried in my condo. I cried in the hospital between surgeries. I cried while driving aimlessly through the city. I had lost the only person who truly loved me, the only person who saw me whole. The funeral was strange. My parents cried, but their tears seemed performative. Marcus looked annoyed. as if the funeral were an inconvenience in his schedule. Chloe stayed by his side, whispering things in his ear and looking at her phone when she thought no one was watching. I sat in the front row, wearing a dark gray dress, my eyes swollen from crying. I held Grandpa's hand in the open casket before the service. It was still warm. I leaned in and whispered, "Thank you for everything, Grandpa. For seeing me, for loving me, for teaching me that my value does not depend on them." After the service, Grandpa's lawyer approached me, an older man named Mr. Sterling, impeccable black suit, worn leather briefcase. "Dr. Vance," he said in a soft but formal voice, "Mr. Reginald left specific instructions. I need to meet with you privately as soon as possible. There are urgent matters to discuss." My mother overheard part of the conversation. "Matters? What matters? We are the family. Whatever Dad left concerns all of us." Mr. Sterling looked at her with a neutral, professional expression. "Mrs. Vance, I respect your position. However, Mr. Reginald was very clear. I must first meet with Dr. Vance in private. Afterward, there will be a formal reading of the will for the entire family." Marcus approached with his typical way of invading personal space. "This is ridiculous. What secrets could Grandpa have with Naomi? She barely visited him." That lie hit me like a slap. I had spent more time with Grandpa in his last years than my entire family combined, but I didn't respond. Not at the funeral. "We will meet tomorrow," I told Mr. Sterling, "in my hospital office at 4 p.m. That night, I took the envelope from my safe, still sealed, still with my name in Grandpa's handwriting. I ran my fingers over the letters, feeling the texture of the thick paper. "What did you leave for me, Grandpa?" I whispered in my empty condo. "What is this justice you spoke of?" The meeting with Mr. Sterling was revealing in ways I never imagined. He arrived with 3 briefcases full of documents. He sat across from my desk, declined the coffee I offered, and got straight to the point. "Dr. Vance, your grandfather loved you deeply. That must be clear from the beginning. Everything he did was because he considered you the only person worthy of his legacy." "What do you mean by legacy?" Mr. Sterling opened the first briefcase and pulled out a green folder. "Mr. Reginald was a very intelligent, very observant man. For decades he watched how his family treated you. He observed how his son Elijah and his daughter-in-law Denise favored Marcus over you. He observed every injustice, every slight, every moment they made you feel invisible." My throat closed up. Hearing those words out loud, validated by someone else, was almost too much. "He also observed," Mr. Sterling continued, "how you built yourself up with no help from anyone. How you became an exceptional surgeon, a successful woman, someone who makes a real difference in the world. And he decided that when he departed, his fortune should go into the right hands." He opened the folder. Inside was a 40-page will, every sheet sealed and signed by notaries. "Mr. Reginald leaves you the totality of his estate," he said with no emotion in his voice, as if reading the weather. $3,200,000 in bank accounts and securities. The house where he lived, valued at $450,000. His art collection, approximately $200,000. All his personal belongings, including his medical library, which he knew you would appreciate. I froze. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't process what I was hearing. That's more than $4 million, I finally managed to say. $4,300,000 to be exact. To your parents, he leaves $100,000 each. To your brother Marcus, $10,000. And a letter. Mr. Sterling pulled out a smaller envelope to be delivered to Marcus during the formal reading of the will. Mr. Reginald was very specific. He wanted his grandson to hear certain truths. My hands trembled as I took the copy of the will, page after page of legal language that essentially said the same thing. Naomi receives everything. Naomi is the sole heir. Naomi is the one who deserves the fruit of a lifetime of work. "Is this legal? Can they contest it?" Mr. Sterling smiled for the first time. Doctor, Mr. Reginald and I worked on this will for 3 years. It is legally ironclad in every possible way. We had it reviewed by 5 other specialized lawyers. Your family can try to contest it, but I assure you they will waste time and money. Why did he do this? I understand he loved me, but this is going to destroy my family. With all due respect, Doctor, your family destroyed itself decades ago. Mr. Reginald simply ensured that justice was served. Furthermore, there is more. More? How could there be more? Mr. Sterling opened the second briefcase. Mr. Reginald hired me 2 years ago to investigate the finances of your nephew Marcus. What we discovered is concerning. He pulled out another folder. This one read. Inside were bank statements, loan documents, and transaction records. Marcus currently owes $320,000 to various creditors, credit cards, personal loans, failed business debts. He has been evading creditors for years, moving between questionable legal schemes. The house he lives in has a second mortgage that your parents do not know about. It is 2 months away from foreclosure. I looked at the documents with horror and fascination. My brother, the family prince, was financially ruined. Mr. Reginald knew that Marcus would eventually try to ask the family for more money, especially after his death, when he expected to inherit a considerable sum. This is why the will is as it is. Mr. Reginald did not want his hard-earned money to be wasted paying off the debts of a man who never learned responsibility. Do my parents know this about Marcus's debts? No. Marcus has been very careful to hide it, but eventually everything comes to light. Mr. Sterling closed the red folder and looked me directly in the eyes. Dr. Vance, your grandfather gave me one final instruction. He asked me to tell you this verbatim. Don't be afraid of the coming storm. You are stronger than all of them put together. And when they try to make you feel guilty, remember every time they made you feel invisible. Remember who was there when you had nothing. Tears finally fell. I cried in my office in front of a lawyer I barely knew. I cried for the grandfather who loved me so much he prepared my defense even after he was gone. I cried for the girl I was who never received what she deserved. The formal reading of the will was 5 days later. My parents, Marcus, Chloe, and I met in Mr. Sterling's office. The atmosphere was tense but cordial. Everyone expected to hear how Grandpa's inheritance would be divided. Denise wore an elegant black dress and a pearl necklace. Elijah wore his best suit. Marcus and Chloe arrived hand in hand. He looked confident. She wore that practiced smile that never reached her eyes. Mr. Sterling began to read. The first paragraphs were legal formalities. Then he got to the figures. To my son, Elijah Vance, I leave the sum of $100,000 with the hope that he understands that money does not replace presence. Dad nodded, satisfied. $100,000 was a considerable sum. To my daughter-in-law, Denise Vance, I leave the sum of $100,000 with the request that she reflect on what it truly means to be a mother. Mom frowned slightly at the second part, but the money seemed to smooth over any offense. To my grandson, Marcus Vance, I leave the sum of $10,000. The silence was absolute. Marcus straightened in his chair. 10,000? Only 10,000? Mr. Sterling continued as if he hadn't heard. And a letter, which I will now proceed to read according to the testator's instructions. He pulled out a paper in Grandpa's handwriting. My heart was beating so hard, I thought everyone could hear it. Marcus, I have watched you for 42 years. I have watched you waste opportunity after opportunity. I have watched you take your parents' money without gratitude or shame. I have watched you treat your sister with contempt when she surpasses you in every way. The $10,000 is more than you have honestly earned in your life. Marcus violently stood up. The chair fell backward with a crash. This is a joke! This has to be a joke! Mr. Sterling raised a hand. Please, Mr. Vance, sit down. I have not finished reading yet. I am not sitting down. This will is a fraud. My grandfather was senile. Someone manipulated him. Sir, Mr. Reginald was evaluated by 3 different psychiatrists during the drafting of this will. All certified that he was in full use of his mental faculties. If you wish to contest it, that is your right, but I warn you that you will lose. Chloe touched Marcus's arm. Honey, sit down. Let's hear the whole thing. He picked up the chair and slumped into it, his jaw clenched, the veins in his neck visible. My mother looked pale. My father stared at the floor. Mr. Sterling continued reading the letter. I have watched how your sister Naomi built her life with her own hands, without help, without privilege, without the cushion of money that you always had. She is everything you could have been if you had chosen effort over entitlement. For this reason, and because she is the only person in this family who understands the value of work and dignity, I leave Naomi the totality of my remaining estate. What? Denise finally spoke. Totality? How much is the totality? Approximately $4,300,000 plus properties and assets, Mr. Sterling replied. Chaos erupted. Marcus yelled that this was unfair, that I had manipulated Grandpa, that he was going to sue until he took everything from me. Chloe tried to calm him, but her eyes threw daggers at me. My mother cried, not from sadness, but from outrage. My father looked at me as if I had committed a crime. Naomi, Elijah said, his voice trembling with contained rage. What did you do to Grandpa? How did you convince him of this? I didn't do anything, I replied with a calmness I didn't feel. I didn't even know about this until 5 days ago. Liar, Marcus yelled. You were always a manipulator. You always wanted to be better than me. I never had to want to be, Marcus. I simply am. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. But it was the truth. The truth I had lived all my life without daring to say out loud. Marcus lunged toward me. Mr. Sterling stepped between us. Sir, I ask you to control yourself, or I will have to call security. This is not going to end here, Marcus hissed. I'm going to contest this will. I'm going to prove you manipulated him. I'm going to destroy you. Try it, I said, standing up. But before you start a legal battle you can't win and can't afford, you should know that Grandpa also investigated your finances. I know about the $320,000 of debt. The second mortgage. I know everything, Marcus. His face lost all color. Chloe looked at him, confused. What is she talking about? What second mortgage? Shut up, Naomi, Marcus said in a low, dangerous voice. Why should I shut up? Why have I always had to shut up? You all have lived in a fantasy for decades, pretending Marcus is successful when he is actually a financial failure who has survived only thanks to our parents' money. Denise stood up. Stop it! I won't allow you to talk about your brother like that. He has worked hard. He has tried to build businesses. Not all of us have the luck of having your stable job. Luck? The laugh that escaped me sounded bitter even to my own ears. You think this was luck? I studied for years while Marcus went from party to party. I worked 36-hour shifts while he slept until noon. I built a career while you handed him everything. It wasn't luck, Mom. It was sacrifice, something none of you understand. You're ungrateful, my mother said with venom in her voice. After everything we've done for you. What have you done for me? What exactly? Tell me one thing. Just one thing you've done for me that you didn't do double for Marcus. Silence. A deafening silence that answered my question better than any word. That's what I thought, I said, picking up my purse. Mr. Sterling, send me the papers I need to sign. I'm leaving. Naomi, my father finally spoke. Don't destroy this family over money. I stopped at the door and turned around. I'm not destroying it, Dad. You did that decades ago. Grandpa Reginald just made sure there were consequences. I left that office. I didn't look back. The calls started that same night. My mother, my father, even Marcus tried, with a falsely conciliatory tone. Everyone wanted to talk, reconcile, find a fair solution. I ignored every call, blocked their numbers. I needed space to process everything. I had expected to inherit something from Grandpa. Maybe $50,000, maybe $100,000. I never imagined this. I never imagined he would leave me everything. The next months were strange. I signed papers, transferred properties, consolidated bank accounts. Grandpa's house was now legally mine. His medical books filled 3 complete shelves in my condo. His art collection hung on my walls. But the most valuable thing wasn't the money or the properties, it was the validation. It was knowing that someone had seen me, valued me, and considered me worthy. Grandpa Reginald had given me something money couldn't buy, confirmation that I wasn't crazy, that the injustices I had lived were real. Marcus tried to contest the will as he had threatened. The process lasted 6 weeks before his lawyer told him it was hopeless. He had spent $1,000 of the $10,000 he inherited, plus $5,000 borrowed, on legal fees, all for nothing. My parents stopped calling after 3 months. I suppose they finally understood that I wasn't going to share the inheritance, that Grandpa's money wasn't available to rescue Marcus from his endless debts. A year passed, then 2. My life continued. Surgeries, conferences, patients saved. Grandpa's inheritance was wisely invested, generating returns I didn't even need because my salary was already more than enough. I thought about starting a foundation, something to honor Grandpa's memory, but I wanted to wait for the right time. I wanted it to mean more than just money. And then, 2.5 years after the reading of the will, I received a call from Chloe. "Naomi," her voice was sweet, almost friendly. "I know it's been years since we talked. I know things ended badly, but Marcus and I wanted to extend an olive branch. We want to invite you to dinner at our house, an intimate family dinner, just us, your parents, and you, to try to heal." Every instinct told me to refuse, that this was a trap, that after years of silence, this sudden kindness couldn't be genuine. But a part of me, that part that was still the girl who craved her family's love, wanted to believe that maybe they had changed, that maybe they had reflected, that maybe they were ready to truly see me. "When would the dinner be?" I asked cautiously. "This Saturday. Nothing formal, just a family gathering. We've been doing a lot of thinking, Naomi. Marcus has realized many things. He's matured. We genuinely want to rebuild the bridges that were broken." There was something in her tone that didn't quite convince me. Too rehearsed, too perfect, as if she had practiced every word in front of the mirror. "Let me think about it," I replied. "Of course. I'll send you the address and a message. I sincerely hope you come. It would be important for everyone, especially for Marcus." She hung up before I could respond. The message arrived 3 minutes later. The address was the same house where they had always lived. At least the second mortgage hadn't destroyed them yet. I spent the next few days debating with myself. My rational side screamed that this was a bad idea, that after years of silence, a sudden invitation couldn't mean anything good, that they probably wanted to ask me for money in some elaborate way. But my emotional side, the one I never managed to kill completely, whispered that maybe I deserved to give them a chance, that maybe 2.5 years was enough time for reflection, that maybe we could finally have something resembling a functional family. Have you ever wanted something to be true so badly that you ignore all the warning signs? Saturday arrived. I dressed carefully. I chose a beige-colored dress, elegant but not ostentatious. I didn't want to look like I was flaunting my success, but I also didn't want to look weak. The balance was delicate. I drove to their house with sweaty hands on the steering wheel. The house looked the same as always. Well-maintained yard, fresh sand-colored paint, 2 cars in the driveway. One was Marcus's, old but functional. The other I didn't recognize, probably my parents'. I rang the doorbell. Chloe opened the door with a wide smile. She wore a lavender-colored dress, her hair perfectly styled as always. "Naomi, what a joy that you came. Come in, come in." The inside of the house smelled of home-cooked food. Roast chicken, if I wasn't mistaken. The dining table was elegantly set. White tablecloth, candles, wine glasses. Too elegant for a simple, casual family dinner. My parents were already sitting in the living room. My mother wore a dark green dress and jewelry I hadn't seen before. My father wore a dress shirt and slacks. Everyone was dressed as if this were an important event. "Naomi!" My mother stood up and hugged me. a stiff, uncomfortable hug that lasted exactly 2 seconds. "You look good. A little thin, maybe. Are you eating well?" The criticism disguised as concern. Classic. "I'm perfectly fine, Mom." Marcus walked in from the kitchen with a bottle of wine. He looked different, thinner, with pronounced dark circles under his eyes, some gray hairs I didn't remember. The last few years hadn't been kind to him. "Sister," he said with what seemed to be a genuine smile, "thank you for coming. It means a lot to us." "Thank you for the invitation," I responded automatically, still on alert. Dinner began with light conversation. The weather, the news, unimportant anecdotes. Chloe served the chicken with elaborate side dishes. Everything tasted good, I had to admit. They had made an effort with the food, but there was something strange in the air, an underlying tension, glances that crossed between Marcus and Chloe, smiles that didn't fully reach their eyes. My mother nervously touched her necklace every few minutes. "Naomi," my father began while cutting his chicken, "we've been thinking a lot about the past, about how we handled things when you were kids." Here came the prepared speech. "We recognize that maybe we weren't as equitable as we should have been," Denise continued. "That perhaps we favored Marcus in ways that weren't fair to you, perhaps, as if they still couldn't fully admit it." "I've grown," Marcus added. "I've had time to reflect on my behavior, on how I treated you, and I want to apologize. Truly, Naomi, I was an idiot. A terrible brother." The words sounded right. The tone seemed sincere, but something in my gut told me it wasn't, that this was a carefully orchestrated performance. "I appreciate the apology," I said neutrally. "What we want," Chloe leaned forward with her most charming smile, "is to rebuild our family relationship. Start over. Leave the past behind. And to do that," Marcus took a sip of wine, "we thought it might be good to do something together as a family, a project that unites us." There it was. I knew there had to be something more. "What kind of project?" I asked. "Well," Marcus exchanged a glance with Chloe, "I've been developing a new business idea, a holistic medical clinic. It would combine traditional treatments with alternative therapies. It would be revolutionary, and I thought that you, with your medical expertise and your connections—" "You want me to invest in your business," I interrupted him. "It's not just my business. It would be our business, the family's. We would all put something in. You would have a significant percentage. It would be a way to honor Grandpa's memory by using his inheritance for something that helps people." There was the real reason for this dinner. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted my money, Grandpa Reginald's money, which pained them so much that I had it. "How much do you need?" I asked directly. Marcus cleared his throat. "Well, to start, we would need about $300,000, but it would be a solid investment. I've done all the research. The profit margins in this sector are incredible." Casually, almost exactly the amount of his debts, according to the documents Mr. Sterling had shown me years ago. "I see," I said, taking a sip of water. "You don't have to decide now," Chloe quickly added. "We just want you to consider the possibility as a way to unite us as a family. And we recognize," my father spoke again, "that you worked very hard for your money, that Grandpa left it to you because he trusted you, but I also believe he would have wanted the family to remain united." They were using Grandpa Reginald as an emotional tool, the same grandfather who had explicitly written in his will why he did not trust Marcus with the money. I looked around the table, at my mother with her hopeful expression, at my father nodding as if this made perfect sense, at Chloe with her rehearsed smile, at Marcus trying to look vulnerable and reformed. And something inside me broke, not from sadness, but from final clarity. "No," I simply said. The word fell on the table like a stone into still water. The silence that followed was dense, heavy. "No?" Marcus repeated, as if he hadn't heard correctly. "No, I am not going to invest in your business. I am not going to give you $300,000 to pay off your debts disguised as a business opportunity. And I am not going to participate in this charade of family reconciliation that you obviously organized just to access Grandpa's inheritance. The masks began to fall. Chloe's smile hardened. Marcus's eyes narrowed. My mother let out an exasperated sigh. "Naomi, you're misunderstanding everything," Marcus said, his voice tense. "This isn't about money. It's about family." "Really? Then explain to me why, in 2.5 years, I didn't receive a single call, not a message, nothing. And suddenly, when you need $300,000, I'm your dear sister again." "Don't be dramatic," my mother intervened. "We called you many times after the will. You were the one who ignored us. You called me to demand I share the inheritance, to tell me it was unfair, to make me feel guilty for something I didn't decide. You never called to ask how I was. You never called just to talk. You only wanted the money that should have been the whole family's." Marcus spat the words, venom dripping from them. "My grandfather was senile. You manipulated him. Your grandfather was more lucid than you have been your entire life, and you know it. That's why you couldn't win the contestation, because 3 psychiatrists certified he was completely sane. You were always his favorite," Marcus continued, his voice rising in volume. "He always treated you like you were special, like you were better than all of us. He treated me with basic respect, something you never did. That's not favoritism, Marcus. That's the minimum a human being deserves, basic respect." Marcus laughed bitterly. "You always thought you were better than us, always looking down, judging us with your perfect career and your perfect life." "My life is not perfect, but I built it myself, without help from anyone except Grandpa, who only gave me emotional support, not money. Everything I have, I earned with my own effort. Can you say the same, Marcus?" He stood up abruptly. The chair scraped against the floor. "I'm sick of your self-righteous attitude. I'm sick of you acting like you're a victim. You had the same opportunities I did." "The same opportunities?" I stood up too. "Were you given $100,000 for your education?" "No, because they paid for yours completely." "Were you bought a car at 18? "Yes." "Me? No." "Were you financially supported until you were 40 years old?" "Yes." "Me? Never." We did not have the same opportunities, Marcus. You had privilege after privilege, and you wasted them all. "Because I never had the natural talent you have," he finally yelled. "Because I'm not a genius like you. Some of us are just normal people." And there it was, the truth that had been hidden beneath years of arrogance and overcompensation. It wasn't that Marcus thought he was better than me. It was that he knew he wasn't, and he couldn't stand it. "You don't need to be a genius to be responsible," I said, calmer. "You don't need to be brilliant to be grateful for what you're given. You don't need exceptional talent to treat your family with basic respect." "Respect?" Chloe joined in, her voice sharp, full of indignation. "You want to talk about respect? You came here tonight with your air of superiority, judging us from your high pedestal. You didn't come willing to reconcile. You came to rub your success in our faces." "I came because I was invited under the pretense of reconciliation. I came to give you an opportunity you frankly didn't deserve. And what I found was exactly what I expected. A financial ambush disguised as a family dinner." "You are selfish," my mother said in an icy voice. "Grandpa would be disappointed to see what you've become. A bitter woman who refuses to help her own family." Those words hit me, but not in the way she expected. They hit me with the final clarity that no matter what I did, I would never be enough for them. I could give them all the money in the world, and they would still find something to criticize. "Grandpa would be proud," I replied firmly, "because I did exactly what he taught me, to value myself, to not let myself be used, to understand that family isn't just blood, it's mutual respect." "Then leave," Marcus said, approaching me with heavy steps. "If you despise us so much, get out of our house." "With pleasure." I took my purse from the back of the chair, but before I could take a step, Marcus did something I didn't see coming. He picked up the plate of hot soup that was in front of him, still steaming because it had just been served as the second course, and he flipped it over my head. The boiling liquid burned my scalp. I felt it slide down my face, down my neck. It soaked my beige dress. Chunks of vegetables fell onto my shoulders. The pain was intense, but the shock was worse. 20 pairs of eyes watched me because we weren't alone. There were other people in the house, friends of Marcus and Chloe, who had been in the adjoining living room, supposedly to arrive later, but who had clearly been there the whole time, listening. "You have 10 minutes to get out of my house," Marcus said, pointing to the door with a theatrical voice. His face was red with rage. The veins in his neck pulsed. 10 minutes to get out of my family forever." The silence was absolute. No one moved. No one protested. My parents remained seated, staring at their plates. They said nothing in my defense. They did nothing to stop their son. And then Chloe started to clap. Slowly at first, then louder, as if her husband had just done something admirable. The guests in the adjoining living room joined the applause. Clapping that rang in my ears like funeral bells. I wiped my face with the napkin I still held in my hand. I took a deep breath. 67 years of humiliations had led to this moment, but I was no longer the invisible girl. I was no longer the woman who accepted slights in silence. I reached into my black leather purse, my purse that I always carried with me, where I kept important things, where, for some reason I couldn't fully explain, I had brought certain documents tonight, as if a part of me had known I would need them. I pulled out a thick manila envelope and threw it onto the table with such force that the wine glasses trembled. The documents scattered among the dirty plates and the candles that were still burning. "Correct," I said with a calmness that surprised even myself. 10 minutes, and everything that is yours will have disappeared." Marcus's smirk faltered. Only for a moment, but I saw it. I saw the fear cross his eyes before he could hide it. "What is this?" Chloe asked, picking up one of the documents. "That," I said, wiping another piece of carrot from my cheek, "is Grandpa Reginald's will. In case you forgot it, read it out loud, Chloe. The part where he explains exactly why Marcus received only $10,000. "We all already know the will," Marcus growled. "But your guests don't." I pointed toward the adjoining room where his friends continued to watch in silence. "Didn't you want an audience for my humiliation? Well, now they're going to hear the whole story." I pulled out another document. "This is a detailed financial report of your debts, Marcus. $320,000. Did you tell Chloe about the second mortgage on this house? Did you tell her that you are 2 months away from losing everything?" Chloe turned to her husband with wide eyes. "What is she talking about? What second mortgage?" "She's lying," Marcus said, but his voice trembled. "I'm not lying, and I can prove it." I pulled out another paper. "This is the second mortgage document, signed by you 18 months ago, $75,000 at 25% annual interest. A predatory loan you accepted because no real bank would lend you money." The color drained from Chloe's face. She took the document with trembling hands and began to read it. Her eyes moved quickly over the lines, and with every passing second her expression hardened. "Marcus, this is real." Her voice was barely a whisper, but charged with contained fury. "You mortgaged our house without telling me? $75,000? What did you spend that money on?" But I wasn't done. I pulled out another document, then another, then another. I scattered them on the table like cards in a poker game where I held the winning hand. "This is a $30,000 loan you took out using false income information. It's technically fraud. This other one is a credit card that's been in collections for 8 months. Here's a lawsuit from a former business partner who says you stole $45,000 from him." I continued. Marcus tried to snatch the papers, but I moved faster. Years of surgery had perfected my reflexes. "Don't touch me," I said in an icy voice. "You already burned me with soup. If you put a hand on me again, I'll call the police. And trust me, with all these fraud documents, they'd love to talk to you." He stopped, breathing heavily like a bull about to charge. But wait, I continued, enjoying every second of watching his world crumble. There's more, because Grandpa Reginald didn't just investigate your finances. He left me specific instructions on what to do with certain information. I pulled out a different folder, this one dark green. Do you remember those investors who lost money in your consulting firm 5 years ago? The ones who accepted an out-of-court settlement paid for by our parents? Naomi, don't you dare, Marcus said in a dangerously low voice. It turns out that one of those investors was a personal friend of Grandpa's, and when he found out what had happened, he contacted others who were also defrauded by you. There are 6 people in total who lost a combined $230,000 from your false promises. That was already legally settled, my father finally intervened, finding his voice. It was settled with a confidentiality agreement that required the victims not to speak publicly about the case. But that agreement has a clause. If Marcus commits fraud again, the agreement is nullified and they can proceed with criminal charges. The silence in the room was so dense you could cut it with a knife. And guess what I discovered 3 months ago? I continued. Marcus has been operating another consulting company under a different name, using the exact same scheme, promising impossible results, charging upfront, and disappearing when clients ask for explanations. There are already 4 new victims. You're lying, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. I'm not lying. I have sworn affidavits. I have emails. I have contracts signed by you with promises you knew you couldn't keep. And best of all, I pulled out my phone and held it up. I recorded this entire conversation, including the part where you physically assaulted me in front of witnesses. Chloe dropped the document she was holding. Her face had gone from shock and fury to something close to horror. "Who are you?" she asked Marcus. "Who the hell are you, really?" "Chloe, listen to me." He tried to take her arm, but she violently pulled away. "Don't touch me. Don't come near me. I haven't put up with your lies for years, your empty promises, your failed businesses. But fraud, real victims, the possibility of jail. I'm not going down with you, Marcus. Call a lawyer. You're going to need one for the divorce, too." She left the house, leaving the door open. The sound of her car starting up echoed in the silence she left behind. Marcus sank into a chair, his head in his hands. For the first time in his life, he looked truly defeated. There was no ego, no arrogance, just a 45-year-old man finally facing the consequences of decades of irresponsibility. "But that's not all," I continued without mercy. I still had 2 minutes of the 10 he had given me. "This house, the house where you ordered me to leave in 10 minutes, do you know whose it really is?" Marcus slowly lifted his head. "When you bought this house 13 years ago, Mom and Dad gave you $50,000 for the down payment. You took out a mortgage for the rest, but you were never able to maintain the payments consistently. You refinanced 3 times, you took out that second mortgage, and 4 months ago, when you were about to lose it, someone paid off all your mortgage debts." I pulled out the last document, a deed. "It was me. I paid $310,000 to liquidate your mortgages, and as part of the agreement with the bank, the house was transferred into my name. This house, Marcus, is no longer yours. It's mine." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the guests in the adjoining living room, who had been watching this drama as if it were a play, held their breath. "You can't do that," my mother whispered. "You can't take away his house." "It's no longer his house, it's my house, and I have every legal right to ask him to leave. In fact," I checked my watch again, "I told him that in 10 minutes, everything that was his would have disappeared. 9.5 minutes have passed." "Naomi, please," my father spoke, his voice cracking. "He's your brother. You can't leave him on the street." "Can't I? He had no problem ordering me out of his family after scalding me with boiling soup. Why should I show him more mercy than he showed me?" I knelt down to Marcus's eye level. He was still seated, wearing an expression of complete shock. "But unlike you, I am not cruel without reason. So here is the deal. You can stay in this house, my house, for 6 months. 6 months to get a real job, to start paying off your debts, to straighten out your life. The rent will be $2,000 a month, a fair market price. If you pay on time, if you meet your obligations, if you truly show that you have changed, then in a year, I will consider selling you the house back at the price I paid for it, no interest. What if I can't pay? He asked in a hollow voice. Then you will have to move out, and the house will be sold to the highest bidder. Those are the rules the real world follows, Marcus. The same rules the rest of us have always followed. Welcome to reality. I stood up and headed toward the door, but before leaving, I turned back one last time to my parents. And you two, Denise and Elijah, I want you to know something. For 67 years, I sought your approval, your love, your recognition. I killed myself studying, working, building myself up, thinking that someday you would truly see me, that someday you would say you were proud of me. Tears ran down my cheeks, mixing with the remnants of the soup, but they weren't tears of sadness, they were tears of liberation. But Grandpa Reginald taught me something crucial before he died. He taught me that love and respect cannot be begged for. They cannot be earned with achievements. Either they are given freely or they are not worth having, and you never gave them to me freely. I always had to fight for crumbs, while Marcus received banquets without doing anything. Naomi, please, my mother was sobbing now. Don't destroy this family. I didn't destroy it, Mom. You destroyed it decades ago when you decided that one child was worth more than the other, when you chose ego over fairness, when you preferred the comfort of lies over the discomfort of the truth. I am only putting a name to what always existed. I pulled a smaller envelope from my purse and placed it on the table. This is for you. It's 2 checks, one for each of you, for $50,000. It's more than you gave Grandpa in his life, more than you invested in my education, more than you ever acknowledged my existence. Take it as my last contribution to this family. I don't want your money, my father said, his pride wounded. Of course you want it. You've wanted it since the moment you found out about the inheritance. That's why you organized this dinner. That's why you invited me after years of silence, so take it. But know this, it's the last thing you will ever receive from me. After today, you do not exist to me. There will be no more calls, no more dinners, no more opportunities. I walked toward the door, stopping at the threshold. Grandpa Reginald was right about everything. He told me that someday you would want to boast that I am your daughter, that you would want to tell the world that the famous Dr. Naomi is your family. And when that day came, I should remember who was there when I wasn't famous. That day has already come. In recent years, I've been interviewed on national programs. I've saved lives other doctors considered lost. I've been offered positions in hospitals in 3 different countries. And every time someone asks me about my family, do you know what I say? I say my grandfather was the best man I ever knew, and then I change the subject because you don't deserve to be part of my success story. The 10 minutes were up. I looked at my watch one last time. My 10 minutes are over, and effectively, everything that was yours has disappeared. Your son lost his house, his wife, and his false image of success. You lost your daughter. Not because I am cruel, but because I finally understood what Grandpa tried to teach me, that my value does not depend on your recognition. I walked out of that house with my head held high, with soup still dripping from my hair, but with the lightest heart I had felt in decades. I heard sobs behind me, but I didn't look back. There was nothing there worth keeping. 3 years have passed since that night. Marcus complied with the ultimatum. He returned the money to his victims by selling everything he had of value. He got a job in sales. Nothing glamorous, but honest. He pays his $2,000 rent on time every month. He still has 7 years left to pay off his debt to me, but at least he is trying. Chloe got divorced and moved to another city. My parents tried to contact me several times during the first year. I ignored every call, every message, every letter. Eventually, they stopped trying. And with part of Grandpa Reginald's inheritance, I created the Reginald Vance Foundation for Young Doctors. We grant full scholarships to medical students who come from unsupportive families, who have to build themselves up alone, who are invisible in their own homes. In 3 years, we have helped 47 students achieve their dreams. Every time I hand out a scholarship, I see Grandpa Reginald in their eyes. I see the gratitude, the determination, the fire that cannot be extinguished. And I know he would be proud because, in the end, true family is not the one that shares your blood. It's the one that recognizes your worth, celebrates your achievements, and supports you in your falls. It's the one that sees you when you are invisible to everyone else. Grandpa Reginald was my true family, and now these 47 students, and the hundreds who will come after them, they are my family too. A family I built myself, based on mutual respect and genuine love. You see? Sometimes the family you need is not the one you were given at birth. It's the one you choose to build when you finally understand your own worth. Blood screams, but respect whispers, and it lasts longer. You know, for most of my life, I thought family was something you were born into. But now I know it's something you build with trust, kindness, and respect. I spent years trying to earn love from people who were never capable of giving it. The truth is, when you finally stop chasing approval, you start finding peace. Grandpa Reginald was right all along. Blood may connect us, but it's respect that keeps us together. And when you learn to value yourself, no one can make you feel small again. If you agree with me and enjoyed my story, show it by sending a like on this video. Let's see how many we are. I'm curious, what city are you listening from and what time is it there? Write it in the comments. If you'd like to support me on this journey, you can send a small donation. Thank you for listening and sharing your precious time with me. For more life stories like this one, check out the other videos on my channel and subscribe. On the screen, you'll find 2 new life stories I'm sure you'll enjoy. Click one to listen right away. With love.